My husband's coworker has been openly cheating on his wife with their 23-year-old receptionist for months, and when I anonymously told the wife, it destroyed multiple careers, and my husband says I ruined everything by getting involved in someone else's marriage. I've been staring at my laptop screen for 3 hours, cursor blinking in an empty Facebook message box addressed to a woman I've never met. I keep typing messages and deleting them, because what I'm about to do could destroy a marriage, ruin careers, and potentially blow up my husband's workplace. But I can't shake the feeling that this woman deserves to know what her husband is doing behind her back. Let me start from the beginning because this situation has been eating at me for months, and I need outside perspectives on whether I'm about to make a huge mistake. My husband Mark works in pharmaceutical sales, and if you know anything about that industry, you know it can be pretty intense. Long hours, high pressure, lots of traveling, and unfortunately, a work culture that sometimes involves way too much alcohol and not enough professional boundaries. Mark has been with his company, Medicore Solutions, for about 8 years. He's good at his job, really good. He consistently hits his numbers. Clients love him, and he's built solid relationships with doctors and hospital administrators across 3 states. The money is excellent, but the lifestyle can be demanding. The sales team is relatively small, maybe 15 people total, so everyone knows everyone pretty well. They do quarterly team meetings, annual conferences, and fairly regular happy hours and client entertainment events. Mark comes home with stories about his coworkers pretty regularly, and over the years I've gotten to know them by reputation, even though I've only met most of them a handful of times at company parties. About 2 years ago, Medicore hired a new receptionist named Ashley. She's 23, just out of college, blonde, petite, and the kind of naturally friendly person who remembers everyone's coffee order and always has a smile ready. The first time Mark mentioned her, it was just in passing, something about how the new front desk person was really organized and making everyone's life easier. Over the next few months, Ashley started coming up in conversation more frequently. She was helping with client presentations, staying late to assist with proposals, volunteering for extra projects. Mark always spoke about her professionally, and I didn't think much of it. She sounded like an eager new employee trying to prove herself. The company parties were where I first started noticing things that made me uncomfortable. At the annual holiday party in December, I watched Ashley work the room like a seasoned professional. She was charming, engaging, and seemed to have developed particularly close relationships with several of the married men on the team. Nothing overtly inappropriate, but there was something about the way she touched arms during conversations, laughed just a little too loudly at jokes, and positioned herself in photos that seemed calculated. What really caught my attention was how she interacted with Tom Bradley, the senior account manager. Tom has been with the company for 12 years, is married to a woman named Jennifer, and has 2 young kids, a daughter who's 7 and a son who's 4. I'd met Jennifer a few times at company events over the years, and she always seemed like a lovely person. Quiet, focused on the kids, but warm and genuinely interested in getting to know the other spouses. At that holiday party, I noticed Ashley spent a lot of time talking to Tom. They were always standing close together, sharing inside jokes, and at one point I saw her adjust his tie while they were chatting by the bar. It struck me as oddly intimate for a coworker relationship, but I told myself I was probably reading too much into it. Mark mentioned a few weeks later that Tom and Ashley had been working together on a big account proposal, staying late several nights to get everything perfect. Again, nothing that sounded inappropriate on the surface, but something about it bothered me. Spring brought the quarterly team meeting, which was held at a resort about 2 hours from our city. Spouses weren't invited. It was supposed to be a working retreat with team-building activities and client strategy sessions. Mark was gone for 3 days, and when he came back, he had stories. "You should have seen Tom at the karaoke night," he told me over dinner. He was completely wasted, singing duets with Ashley until like 2 a.m. Jennifer would have killed him if she'd seen it. That comment stuck with me. Mark said it casually, like it was just funny party behavior, but the fact that he specifically mentioned how Tom's wife would react suggested that even Mark thought it was inappropriate. Was anyone else participating in this karaoke situation? I asked. A few people, but Tom and Ashley were definitely the main show. They did this really dramatic version of Don't Go Breaking My Heart that had everyone cracking up. I tried to picture my husband's married coworker doing drunk duets with a 23-year-old receptionist while his wife was at home with their two small children, and it made my stomach turn. Over the next few months, the Ashley and Tom stories continued. They were working on more projects together. They were grabbing lunch regularly to discuss strategy. Ashley had started accompanying Tom to client meetings, which was unusual because receptionist duties typically didn't include external meetings. Then came the story that really set off alarm bells. It was a Friday night in July, and Mark came home from a client happy hour with news that made my blood run cold. "You're not going to believe what Tom told me today," Mark said, loosening his tie and grabbing a beer from the fridge. Apparently, at the client dinner last week, the one in Chicago, Tom and Ashley ended up at the hotel bar after everyone else went to bed, and Tom tried to kiss her. I nearly choked on my wine. He what? Yeah, he was pretty drunk and apparently made a move. Ashley turned him down, but Tom seemed kind of proud of himself for trying. Like it was some kind of conquest or something. I was speechless. This wasn't innocent workplace friendship, or even harmless flirting. Tom had actively tried to cheat on his wife. "What did you say when he told you this?" I asked. Mark shrugged. "I mean, what could I say? It's not really my business what he does." Ashley handled it appropriately by saying no. "But he's married. With kids." I know. But it's not like anything actually happened. And Tom was really drunk. People do stupid things when they drink too much. I couldn't believe Mark was so casual about it. His married coworker had tried to cheat on his wife with a coworker young enough to be his daughter, and Mark's response was essentially, boys will be boys. "Does Ashley seem uncomfortable around him now?" I asked. "Not really. They're still working together on the Morrison account. If anything, they seem closer than before." That didn't sit right with me. If a married coworker had tried to kiss me and I'd turned him down, I would definitely not want to continue working closely with him. The fact that Ashley seemed unfazed suggested that maybe she hadn't been as unwilling as Tom had made it sound. I started paying closer attention to Mark's work stories after that. Every time Tom and Ashley's names came up together, I listened carefully for details that might give me a better picture of what was really going on. In August, there was a big client conference in Las Vegas. The whole sales team went, including Ashley, who was apparently being promoted to Client Relations Coordinator, a newly created position that seemed designed specifically for her. Mark came back from Vegas with stories about the team's exploits, including a night when most of the group had gone to see a show and then hit the casino. According to Mark, Tom and Ashley had disappeared from the group around midnight and nobody saw them again until the next morning. "Where did they go?" I asked. Tom said they went back to the hotel to work on the presentation for the next day, but honestly, who knows? Tom was pretty hungover the next morning, and Ashley looked like she hadn't slept much either. The implication was obvious, but Mark still seemed oblivious to what had probably happened. September brought another quarterly meeting, this time in a mountain resort in Colorado. Again, no spouses invited, 3 days of intensive team building and strategic planning. When Mark got back, he was full of stories about hiking, group dinners, and a particularly wild night that ended with several team members skinny dipping in the resort's hot tub. "Please tell me you did not participate in naked hot tubbing with your coworkers," I said. Mark laughed. "God, no. I went to bed early that night. But apparently Tom and Ashley were the last ones in the hot tub, if you know what I mean." I knew exactly what he meant, and I was disgusted. "Mark, do you understand that Tom is probably having an affair with Ashley?" "I don't know about an affair," Mark said. "They're definitely flirting and maybe fooling around when they travel, but I don't think it's anything serious." "How is that not serious? He's married." "Look, I'm not saying it's right, but it happens. Especially in sales. People travel together, they drink, things get complicated. As long as it doesn't affect their work performance, it's not really anyone else's business." I was shocked by Mark's attitude. The fact that workplace affairs were apparently common in his industry didn't make them okay. And the idea that it was not anyone else's business when someone was cheating on their spouse and potentially deceiving their children made me furious. That night, I found Jennifer Bradley on Facebook. Her profile was mostly photos of her kids, family vacation pictures, and proud posts about Tom's work achievements. In one photo from earlier that summer, she was beaming next to Tom at what looked like a company picnic, with both kids hanging off his arms. The caption read, "So proud of my hard-working husband and grateful for Medicore for being such a supportive work family." The irony made me sick. October brought the news that finally pushed me over the edge. Tom had been promoted to regional sales director, which came with a significant raise and the authority to hire his own team. His first hire? Ashley, as his executive assistant, with a salary that was apparently double what she'd been making as a receptionist. But here's the kicker. The new position required extensive travel with Tom to meet clients across the region. They'd be on the road together at least 2 weeks out of every month, staying in hotels, attending client dinners, and representing the company as a team. When Mark told me about Ashley's promotion, I couldn't contain my frustration anymore. Are you kidding me? He hired his affair partner as his assistant, and now they have a legitimate excuse to travel together constantly? You don't know that they're having an affair, Mark protested. Mark, they've been inappropriately close for months. He tried to kiss her in Chicago. They disappeared together in Vegas. They were alone in a hot tub in Colorado, and now he's hired her for a position that requires them to travel together constantly. What more evidence do you need? Mark was quiet for a moment. Okay, yeah, it does look pretty suspicious when you put it all together like that. So, what are you going to do about it? What am I supposed to do? I can't exactly march into HR and report them for having an affair. And even if I could, I don't have any proof that anything inappropriate is actually happening. You could talk to Tom. Tell him that people are starting to notice and he needs to cool it. Mark shook his head. That's not my place. Tom's a grown man, and if he wants to risk his marriage and his career, that's his choice. I was incredulous. What about Jennifer? What about their kids? Don't they deserve to know what's happening? That's between Tom and Jennifer. I'm not getting involved in their marriage. That's when I realized that if anyone was going to do the right thing, it would have to be me. I started researching Jennifer online, trying to figure out the best way to contact her. Her Facebook profile was fairly private, but I could see enough to know that she seemed completely unaware of what her husband was doing. Her recent posts were about their daughter's soccer games, their son's preschool graduation, and her excitement about a family vacation they were planning for Thanksgiving. Meanwhile, Mark's stories from work painted a picture of Tom and Ashley becoming increasingly bold about their relationship. They were having long private lunches, staying late at the office together several nights a week, and according to office gossip, Ashley had been seen leaving Tom's hotel room during their last business trip. The final straw came in early November. Mark came home from work with news that Tom and Ashley had been caught by a client in a compromising situation. They'd been at a business dinner in Atlanta, and the client had returned to the restaurant to retrieve something he'd forgotten, only to find Tom and Ashley making out in the parking lot. What happened? I asked. The client was apparently pretty uncomfortable about it, but he didn't make a big deal. Just pretended he didn't see anything. But word got back to some of the other guys on the team. And nobody thinks this is a problem? Mark sighed. Look, everyone knows what's going on. But Tom is really good at his job, and Ashley is actually pretty effective in her role. As long as they're hitting their numbers and keeping clients happy, management doesn't want to rock the boat. What about the fact that he's cheating on his wife? That's personal stuff. Companies don't usually get involved in employees' personal lives unless it directly affects work performance. I was done. Absolutely done with the idea that Tom's betrayal of his family was somehow a private matter that nobody should address. That night, I sat down at my computer and started drafting a message to Jennifer. The first version was long and detailed, explaining who I was, how I knew about the situation, and laying out all the evidence of Tom's affair with Ashley. But as I read it over, I realized it sounded crazy and potentially vengeful. I deleted it and tried again, this time keeping it shorter and more factual. But that version sounded cold and cruel. I spent hours trying to find the right tone, the right amount of detail, the right way to deliver news that would undoubtedly devastate this woman's life. Finally, I settled on something simple. Hi, Jennifer. I hope you don't mind me reaching out, but I felt you should know that your husband Tom has been having an inappropriate relationship with a coworker named Ashley. I've heard this from multiple sources and felt you deserve to know. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. I stared at the message for another hour, my finger hovering over the send button. Was I doing the right thing? Was it my place to interfere in someone else's marriage? What if I was wrong about the extent of Tom and Ashley's relationship? But then I thought about Jennifer's Facebook posts, about her pride in her husband and her gratitude for his supportive work family. I thought about those two little kids who adored their father. They all deserved better than being deceived and potentially exposed to STDs, or having their family blown up by Tom's selfishness. I created a fake Facebook account using a generic name and photo, and sent the message. Jennifer read it within an hour. She didn't respond, but I could see that she'd opened it. The next few days were torture. I kept checking to see if Jennifer had posted anything on social media that might give me a clue about how she was handling the news. Her profile remained normal. Pictures of the kids, updates about daily life. No indication that her world had been turned upside down. Mark came home from work that Friday with concerning news. Tom called in sick today, he said. That's weird because he never takes sick days, and we have that big presentation on Monday that he's been preparing for weeks. My heart started racing. Had Jennifer confronted him? Did anyone talk to him? Ashley tried calling him a few times, but he didn't answer. She seemed really worried about him. The irony of Ashley being worried about Tom when she was part of the reason for his problems wasn't lost on me. Over the weekend, Mark got a text from Tom asking if they could meet for coffee on Sunday morning. Tom said he needed to talk to someone about a personal situation. I tried to act normal, but inside I was panicking. What if Tom suspected that someone had told Jennifer? What if he'd figured out it was me somehow? When Mark came back from meeting with Tom, his face was grim. Jennifer knows, he said. My stomach dropped. Knows what? About Tom and Ashley. Someone sent her a message on Facebook telling her about the affair. She confronted Tom yesterday, and he admitted everything. What did he tell you exactly? Mark sat down heavily on the couch. He's a mess. He says Jennifer threw him out of the house and told him not to come back until he figured out what he wanted. She's talking to a divorce lawyer. Part of me felt terrible for causing so much pain, but another part of me felt vindicated. Jennifer deserved to know the truth about her marriage. What about Ashley? I asked. That's the really messy part. Tom told Jennifer everything, including details about their business trips and how the company basically enabled the affair by giving Ashley that promotion. Jennifer is furious about that and apparently threatened to contact HR and possibly sue the company for creating a hostile work environment. I hadn't considered the legal ramifications of the situation. If Jennifer decided to go after Medicore for facilitating her husband's affair, it could affect everyone's job, including Mark's. Is Tom going to quit? I asked. He doesn't know. He says he's in love with Ashley and doesn't want to end their relationship, but he also doesn't want to lose his kids. He's hoping Jennifer will agree to counseling and they can work things out. While he's still involved with Ashley? That's the thing. Ashley apparently freaked out when Tom told her that Jennifer knew. She's worried about her job and her reputation. She told Tom that maybe they should cool things down for a while. So Ashley was willing to pursue a married man and help him cheat on his wife, but as soon as there were potential consequences for her professionally, she wanted to back off. That made me even angrier. Tom asked me not to tell anyone about this conversation. Mark continued. He's embarrassed and doesn't want it to become office gossip. The irony was almost laughable. Tom was worried about people gossiping about his affair after he'd been conducting it openly for months. Monday brought more drama. Tom didn't come to work, and Ashley spent the day crying in the bathroom and fielding phone calls from what sounded like lawyers or HR representatives. Mark came home with an update. Jennifer had indeed contacted Medicore's HR department and filed a formal complaint about the company's handling of Tom and Ashley's relationship. She was arguing that the company had rewarded their inappropriate conduct with promotions and travel opportunities, creating a hostile work environment for families of employees. What does that mean for everyone else? I asked. Nobody knows yet. There's going to be an investigation, and depending on what they find, Tom could be fired. Ashley too. And if Jennifer decides to sue, the whole company could be in trouble. I was starting to realize that my decision to tell Jennifer about the affair had set in motion a chain of events that could have far-reaching consequences. Tuesday brought the news I'd been dreading. Tom had figured out who'd told Jennifer about the affair. Tom thinks it was someone from work, Mark told me over dinner. He's been going through all his conversations from the past few months, trying to figure out who knew enough details to have told Jennifer what they told her. What kind of details? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Apparently, whoever messaged Jennifer knew about specific trips and incidents that only a few people would have known about. Tom is pretty sure it was someone on the sales team. My blood turned to ice. If Tom was narrowing it down to the sales team, and if he started questioning people about who they talked to about his relationship with Ashley, it wouldn't take long for him to figure out that Mark had been sharing stories with me. Is Tom angry? I asked. Furious. He feels like someone betrayed his trust and destroyed his marriage. He's talking about finding out who did it and getting them fired. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. I'd wanted to do the right thing by telling Jennifer the truth about her husband's affair, but now I was potentially facing consequences I hadn't anticipated. What if Tom figured out it was me and went after Mark's job? What if the HR investigation uncovered the fact that employees' spouses were sharing confidential information about coworkers? What if my decision to anonymously message Jennifer ended up destroying not just Tom's career, but Mark's too? Wednesday brought partial relief. Tom resigned from Medicore rather than face the HR investigation. In his resignation letter, he took full responsibility for his inappropriate conduct and apologized to the company for any disruption his personal choices had caused. Ashley was placed on administrative leave pending the completion of the investigation into her role in the situation. Mark seemed relieved that the immediate drama was over, but I could tell he was still bothered by the whole situation. I keep thinking about what Tom said about someone betraying his trust, Mark told me that evening. I mean, he brought this on himself by having the affair, but it does feel kind of messed up that someone went behind his back to tell Jennifer. I felt like I was going to throw up. Do you think whoever told Jennifer did the wrong thing? Mark was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. On one hand, Jennifer had a right to know that her husband was cheating on her. On the other hand, it wasn't really that person's business to get involved in someone else's marriage. But what if nobody had told her? She might have gone years without knowing, while Tom continued having affairs and putting her at risk. Maybe. Or maybe Tom would have ended things with Ashley on his own, and Jennifer never would have had to know. I wanted to argue with him, to point out that Tom had shown no signs of ending his relationship with Ashley. If anything, he'd been escalating it by hiring her as his assistant. But I couldn't push too hard without revealing my own involvement. The investigation concluded the following week with Ashley being terminated for conduct incompatible with company values. The official statement was carefully worded to avoid admitting any wrongdoing on the company's part, but it was clear that Medicore wanted to distance itself from the situation as quickly as possible. Mark heard through the grapevine that Tom and Ashley were still together and that Tom was looking for a new job in sales. Jennifer had filed for divorce and was seeking full custody of the children, along with a substantial alimony settlement. Do you think Jennifer is glad someone told her? I asked Mark one evening, about a month after everything had blown up. I don't know. Her whole life got turned upside down. Maybe she would have preferred not to know. That hit me hard. What if I destroyed Jennifer's life instead of helping her? What if she'd been happier living in ignorance while Tom had his affairs on the side? But then I thought about those Facebook posts about Jennifer's pride in her husband and her trust in him. She'd been building her life on a lie, and she deserved to know the truth, even if the truth was painful. I also thought about the kids. If Tom had continued his pattern of affairs, there's a good chance Jennifer would have found out eventually anyway, possibly in an even more devastating way. At least now she had the opportunity to protect herself and her children from further betrayal. It's been 3 months since I sent that Facebook message, and I still don't know if I did the right thing. The immediate aftermath was messier than I anticipated, and there were consequences for people I hadn't even considered. But here's what I do know. Tom was cheating on his wife with a coworker young enough to be his daughter. He was lying to Jennifer, potentially exposing her to STDs, and teaching his children through his actions that commitment and fidelity don't matter. Ashley was knowingly participating in the destruction of a marriage and the deception of two innocent children. Neither of them was going to stop on their own. Tom had been escalating the affair for months, and Ashley had been happy to go along with it as long as it benefited her career. Someone needed to tell Jennifer the truth, and nobody else was going to do it. Mark and his coworkers all knew what was happening, but they considered it not their business to interfere in someone else's marriage. But whose business is it to speak up when someone is being betrayed by the person they trust most? If not friends, family, or coworkers who witnessed the betrayal, then who? I created the fake Facebook account because I was worried about the potential backlash if Tom figured out who told Jennifer. Looking back, I'm not sure that was the right approach. It was cowardly and it made the whole thing feel more suspicious and dramatic than it needed to be. But the core decision, to tell Jennifer that her husband was having an affair, I still believe was the right thing to do. Mark disagrees. He thinks I overstepped and that the consequences have been worse than if I'd just stayed out of it. He's probably right that the fallout was more extensive than anyone anticipated. But I keep coming back to those kids. They're 7 and 4 years old, and they deserve to have parents who model honesty, integrity, and respect for marriage and family. Tom was teaching them through his actions that it's okay to lie to the people you're supposed to love most, as long as you don't get caught. If Jennifer had never found out about the affair, Tom might have continued having relationships with other coworkers. Ashley might have used her relationship with Tom to advance her career further. Jennifer might have spent years wondering why her husband was distant or distracted, blaming herself for problems in their marriage that were actually caused by his infidelity. The kids might have grown up in a household full of unspoken tension and dishonesty, never understanding why their parents seemed to be going through the motions of a marriage rather than actually loving each other. Instead, Jennifer now has the information she needs to make informed decisions about her life and her children's future. It's painful information, and the process of dealing with it has been devastating for everyone involved. But at least she's dealing with reality instead of living a lie. I still wonder sometimes if there was a better way to handle the situation. Maybe I should have tried to convince Mark to talk to Tom directly before going to Jennifer. Maybe I should have found a way to tip off Jennifer without making it seem so cloak and dagger. But I also think about all the stories I've heard over the years about people who suspected a spouse was cheating but didn't want to get involved. About friends and family members who watched someone they cared about being betrayed but stayed silent because it was not their business. Those stories usually end one of two ways. Either the betrayed spouse eventually finds out anyway, often in a more devastating way than if someone had told them earlier, or they never find out and spend years of their life in a relationship based on deception. Neither of those outcomes seems better than what happened to Jennifer. So, I'm still conflicted about my decision, but I'm not sorry I made it. Jennifer deserved to know the truth about her marriage, even if the truth was painful. Tom and Ashley deserve to face consequences for their choices, even if those consequences affected other people. And maybe, somewhere down the line, those two kids will be better off growing up in a household where honesty and integrity actually matter, even when it's difficult. But I'm curious what other people think. Was I wrong to get involved in someone else's marriage? Should I have found a different way to handle the situation? Or was telling Jennifer the right thing to do, even though it had messy consequences? TLDR, my husband's married coworker Tom has been having an obvious affair with their 23-year-old receptionist Ashley for months. They've been caught making out, disappearing together on business trips, and he even hired her as his assistant so they could travel together. My husband and all their coworkers know, but consider it not their business. I anonymously messaged Tom's wife, Jennifer, on Facebook to tell her about the affair. She confronted Tom, filed for divorce, and reported the company to HR. Tom quit, Ashley got fired, and now there's a messy legal situation. My husband thinks I overstepped and made things worse. AITA for telling a woman her husband was cheating instead of staying out of their marriage?